Welcome back again to AM Agenda. This morning, of course, Mark Dreyfus and Michael Johnson are joining me from Sydney. Michael, I'm going to start with you. You heard Martin O'Shannessy go through those poll results a bit earlier. What's your take on them? Do you think the coalition will get a morale boost from them?
Look, there's only one poll that counts, and that's on election day. And perhaps the media and Mark and his colleagues are focused on the polls, but we're more focused on holding the government accountable. We're more focused on policy development. So I think polls come and go, and there's only one that really counts.
But Michael, these polls, when you look at them, it does really suggest that voters still don't see the coalition as a credible alternative to the government at the moment.
Well, the government's been in power for 18 months now. It's got the enormous advantage of incumbency. It's had the benefit of throwing billions of dollars, in fact tens of billions of dollars of taxpayers' money at the electorate. So it would follow that perhaps they've got the benefit of the doubt there, but we're going to make sure that we hold them accountable, and we're going to remind the people that at the end of the day, taxes are going to go up, interest rates are going to go up, and it's going to be the electorate that pays for it.
Well, I'm sure Mark Dreyfus will disagree with that, of course. Mark, we've seen that Kevin Rudd's personal support levels are still very high. It seems he's had this never-ending honeymoon period, but today's polls do show that on a two-party preferred basis, Labor's gone backwards 2 points. What do you put that down to?
I'd rather not talk about the polls. Actually, we're focused on supporting jobs and on taking action on climate change. And I think that you'll see from the government over the next several months going into next year, just those things that we're concentrating on.
Well, we will look at policy in just a second, but first though, Michael Johnson, there are reports today that Malcolm Turnbull's looking at a cabinet reshuffle during the parliamentary break next month. Do those reports surprise you, and who are your tips for who we'll see to come out as the winners and the losers?
Oh, look, Malcolm will have to appoint two people to the shadow cabinet or to the shadow ministry, with Chris Pearce and Margaret May announcing their retirement. We're fortunate that we've got some fantastic people. We've got that experience in the backbench, and we've got some hungry, energetic, passionate younger members of Parliament. And he will make the decision as is his prerogative. I'm sure he'll make the right decision and give the opportunities to those who are hungry to win government and hungry to remind the people of Australia that Mark and his colleagues are really taking this country down the wrong path, and it's going to be their children and their grandchildren that will pay an enormous financial price.
Well, let's ask Mark about a few of the changes the Rudd government is implementing at the moment. Today, the government's announcing changes to the bankruptcy laws. Mark Dreyfus, what are the changes and were they really needed?
I think that the changes that have been announced today on the bankruptcy laws are really sensible changes. They're prompted by the fact that most people in recent years who've been involved in the bankruptcy system are in fact people who are doing it tough, people who've got consumer debt rather than people that have tried to rip off their creditors. And the changes that are proposed recognise that. They're good changes. They're changes that will make sure that people have got time to work through debt arrangements, time to make sure that they don't necessarily be forced into bankruptcy over what are quite often quite small debts. You've got to remember that very often it's just people doing it tough who've got very few assets and very little income, and wrapping them up in the bankruptcy system isn't always the right thing to do.
Michael Johnson, apparently there were more than 6,000 non-business bankruptcies in the first 3 months of this year. That number seems quite phenomenal to me. Do you agree that these changes are necessary? They don't, of course, do a lot for the people who are owed money.
Look, on the surface, these changes are probably welcome. I think that the key thing that we've got to do in this country is encourage people to take risk, encourage people to believe in the power of entrepreneurship, to believe in creating jobs. I mean, what we'd love to see in this country is when people leave university or leave colleges, that they're in the business of employing other people. Not just leaving university and thinking, well, where can I get a job? Who's going to give me a job? We want this country to be a country that believes in the values of small business, of entrepreneurship, of creating jobs. I mean, we want to be a country that is a wealth creator, not just a wealth distributor. And I think that's the key difference between the Liberal side of politics and the Labor side of politics.
Well, Mark Dravis, some more changes that we're hearing about is the government's plans to change the youth allowance system. There's been a lot of debate about whether these changes might go too far. Yesterday, the Deputy PM, Julia Gillard, flagged that she may be looking at being a bit more flexible in the case of students who have taken that gap year to prove their independent status. Are you worried that they could miss out on the changes? Were you pleased to see Julia Gillard look like she might be backing down?
Well, I was pleased, Ashley, to see that Julia Gillard was meeting with students in Canberra yesterday, and a whole range of my caucus colleagues who participated in that as well. And what you heard from Julia Gillard yesterday was listening to the concerns that a number of students expressed. And the particular concerns that they expressed were those who have embarked on a gap year thinking that 12 months of work was going to be sufficient for them to get the independent youth allowance. And Julia Gillard's indication was that she was going to listen to the concerns that those students have expressed. I can't, of course, preempt what decision the government's going to make about it. What I would say about the changes to the youth allowance is that approximately 100,000 students are going to be doing better from the new system that we've announced, and that it is very important to arrest the decline in the number of rural and regional students that have been participating in the tertiary education system. What these changes are about is making sure that those students are looked after, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the final form of the youth allowance is going to unfold.
Well, Michael Johnson, the opposition, has been really lobbying the government to make changes in this area, although I guess listening to students is one thing and actually acting is another. What do you expect we'll see as the end result?
Oh, look, Mark's a great guy, and I know he's put a fantastic spin on this schmozzle, but actually this is the perfect example of the Rudd Labor government out of step, out of touch, and quite frankly, out of its depth in terms of students living in rural and regional Australia who are going to miss out on this allowance. I mean, 30,500 plus students would have missed out, or will miss out, unless Julia Gillard does something. And it was good that she talked to them. It was good that she listened to them. But boy, was she dragged kicking and screaming to listen to these young Australians. They need assistance. They are different to city-based students. They need government support, and this is something that we welcome. I would just encourage Mark and his colleagues and the Deputy Prime Minister to be a bit more of a listening government instead of a talking government, and less spin and more substance is highly recommended and encouraged.
And I've got to say something about that, Ashley. I've got to say this is not in any sense just spin. Michael did not explain why it is that there's been a quite severe decline in the number of regional and rural students participating in tertiary education. The new youth allowance system is going to arrest that decline, and of course it's appropriate to listen to people who might have been caught out by particular changes, and that's indeed what was happening yesterday. Those students have been encouraged to come and express their views. I'd actually want to talk about the position that Michael's party has taken in relation to the voluntary student unionism question, and the way in which the coalition parties have blocked legislation that is going to have the most direct and detrimental effect on rural and regional students, those who have to move away from home. The services that are going to be available to those students at tertiary institutions are going to be very detrimentally affected by the continuing blockage by the coalition of the ability of tertiary institutions to charge up to $250.
I'm not sure actually if...
Well, Michael Johnson, student groups do say that under the changes the Howard government made to that particular